YouTube. Hey, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. It's another great day today. Excited for you to join me for this Retirement Readiness Thursday. Today, we're actually going to focus on a different retirement plan. Today, we're going to focus on someone with a pension. We're going to talk about teachers and their retirement plans. I'm here in the good old state of Florida, so I will be referencing what we have as our Florida retirement system, the FRS system. And I will share different bits of information as we go through the discussion. I'll share with you a case study and we'll be able to make adjustments for that as well. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, make the changes. I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, so today we're going to focus on, as I mentioned, a teacher. It's going to be a couple. And so let me tell you a little bit about them, Emily and Tom Retirement. And so Emily is 46. She is currently a teacher. Tom is 51 and he works in technology. He's in IT. And they have two children that they want to save some money for college. And we'll go over some of those strategies as well. High level, the way I normally discuss things with people is you have to get your retirement right first, in my opinion. Obviously, people go in different ways of doing things. And the reason I feel that way is because, in my mind, if you get your retirement right, you're able to then have a lot of different options. So, for example, let's say your kids get student loans, but your retirement is good. What if you in retirement have the excess money at some point in your life? I think we all kind of acknowledge that we make more as we get a little bit older. We also acknowledge that we have less debt and our kids move out and they're paying a lot of their own bills. So it's not impossible for you to have a situation where in your late 50s or so, you go ahead and start helping to pay for your kids' student loans. If that is a goal that you had for yourself, where you said, no, Dre, I want my kids to not have student loans. We could easily put the plan in place, the strategy in place that would allow you to be able to have your retirement first, and then you can help them pay for the student loans second, and you're good. The issue that I have is if you pay for the student loans first, and now your money is not compounding, it's not growing for your retirement, which is easily the largest expense you're going to have is purchasing your freedom. Ultimately, what ends up happening is it's called reverse generational wealth. And it means that our kids end up having to fund our retirement because of different situations that we're going through. And it's almost like that old saying, and I won't bore you with it because I know we've all heard it a gazillion times. But when you go on a plane, they say to put your mask on first and then help the person next to you. You got to make sure you're good to go first. And I have found that when you talk about numbers, it's just in your best interest, in my opinion, to get your retirement right first, and then we can do everything else. We can have legacy planning, generational wealth. You can pay for college for your kids, your grandkids. We can do all sorts of things. But if you don't have the money working for you over those years, then it's something that we have to play catch up. Not to say it's impossible. It's just to say that that's the way I would recommend it. And so we'll go through a couple of these approaches, what we're able to do for them. We'll go through some of their debt. So we have about 30K in the bank account. You see we had it in a joint bank. We have a checking and a savings. 18K in credit cards, not too bad. Investments is 200,000. So we have 50,000 inside of a investment account that they both have. That's an after-tax account. So that's money that has been taxed, put in your bank account, and then you invested it with a Robinhood, a Schwab, a Mayor Price, somewhere, Fidelity. You just have it invested somewhere with after-tax dollars. That means that money in retirement, if it's been there a year and a day, should be taxed at capital gains, which is a much more favorable tax rate. And then we have a 403B plan for Emily. It's very similar to a 401k. It's just the difference is this is one that's for a nonprofit, a government agency, things like that. You find 403B plans, but it's very similar to a 401k. And then we have Emily's traditional IRA. She has 25K in there. Tom has his own 401k with his work. He has 15K. And then Emily has an HSA, which is a health savings account, and she has $10,000 inside of that account. Why would they bring forgive me, for some reason they brought the cat inside and it's screaming at the door. Yeah, right. Can you believe that? That's such as like when you have 4 kids, right? They all go outside, they leave the cat inside, and he's going to scream throughout. And that's why I'm a dog person. No offense to you cat people, but that's why I'm a dog person. Onyx is chilling and he's not going to say anything. And so we have Tom with his 401k, so he has 15k in there, and then Emily's HSA, and we know the HSA has the triple tax benefit. Is the only account that the money goes in tax deferred, which means I get to write it off on my taxes. Doesn't count as income today or tax deductible, and then it grows tax deferred, which means I don't have to pay taxes on the growth each year, and then I get to take the money out tax free as long as it's for a health account or a health expense, which all of us are going to have in retirement. So that is definitely not a concern that most of us have. We're all going to end up having to pay that at some point. So that's where the money is allocated, and we'll talk about some of the tax advantage withdrawal strategies that we can use to help them have more money in their account when it's all said and done. And then the loan, all we have is the mortgage. We have 190k on that, and then we have a car with 10k left. The property is currently worth $300,000, and then that gives us a net worth of $312,000. And you see that we're in that 46 to 50 range. It's probably worth mentioning that you do have what's called a catch-up provision inside of your 401ks and 403bs, that when you're a 50 plus, you're able to contribute an additional $7,000-$8,000. The amount goes up each year. And then that can help you expedite some of your retirement savings. As far as the goals that they had for themselves, they both want to retire at 65. And their retirement expenses were, their normal expenses were about $4,600 a month, and they want to drop it around 4,000. They assume that they have some things paid off. But that said, this number doesn't include things like your mortgage. So the mortgage, it's on the other screen, so we don't double count it. So this is your expenses outside of the mortgage and the car note that was on the other screen that I showed you. We have our normal health expenses. I'm going to show you it's about 5,000 to 8,000 a year is what the estimated healthcare expenses are. So we normally go with the national average, which is about 6,100 currently. And then I do normally leave the long-term care in there because 7 out of 10 people, the numbers say, will have at least one long-term care episode. And so I do normally just leave it in there around the end of the plan, just as a what if, just to say, like, what would happen if we did have to go into a facility or have a home health aide come and visit me 2-3 times a week? Like, what would that look like? We can always remove it afterwards, but I do like to just simply have it in there. Let's build a plan that is future proof in the sense that we're going to say, what is the highest probability of happening? And then are we prepared for those type of events, which we'll go into what I call stress testing. And I will share that with you as well, because we do go over that a couple of times. So as far as our lifestyle vacation, you see that we have a joint vacation goal. We're going to spend about $5,000 a year on vacation, gardening, about $500 every year on gardening, pickleball membership, which I thought was pretty cool. I know it's becoming an up and coming thing. So it's about $2,500 a year for a pickleball membership. And that includes the husband, the wife, and then they could bring like kids or grandkids. It was like one of those memberships. So I thought it was pretty cool for them. They do want to have a rental property, and they're estimating that to be about $300,000. And then we put the estimated amounts in there as far as the vacancy rate of have someone in there 95% of the time. They'll pay 20% down, and they'll use the income to help pay it off. And then what the 30-year is, the depreciation, all that beautiful stuff. We plan on getting that when Emily turns 60 years old. It's a part of her retirement plan. I find that a lot of the time when you're a teacher, a lot of time teachers, they're risk adverse just by nature, right? Like they have a pension that is going to be coming in, and then they're able to have some sort of other income stream. So we normally have to figure out whether they want Social Security, an annuity, or some sort of a rental income. These are the income streams that they feel the most comfortable with. And so for this particular situation, they were thinking investment property would be something that they wanted. And I'll show you what that looks like. Of course, we did mention the kids in their college. So what we do is we take simply the national average for a 4-year in-state college. And then we say we're going to pay for 18 to 21. And then we'll put the plan together as far as just what that estimated amount is. As you see, that's what we're saying. We're saying it's an estimated amount, and it's going to be about $28,000 now. And then we use the time value of money to estimate what that will be in the future. And so we're just putting all the goals in there. If we have to make adjustments, we make the adjustments later on. As you know, we normally want them to be somewhere around that 70-80% probability of success. And when we're able to say, all right, hey, look, it's 50%. Let's look at this. What changes can we make? We have 3 levers that we can always pull. We can take longer to retire, where we wait a little bit longer. We can increase how much we invest, or we can decrease our expenses. And sometimes that could be from a tax perspective. Sometimes that can be from a goal and aspiration perspective. And so then for the legacy, we just have a placeholder. We didn't really sit on number, and so we just have that in place. But we did have a passion project. So Emily, as a teacher, she was very interested in being able to do workshops for reading literacy, and she said that that would be about $1,000 a year, but she was very interested in being able to do that. And so we were able to have all of the goals set aside. For income, Emily's at 55,000, Tom is at 85,000. Social Security are estimated. If you want the exact number, we would just go to the Social Security website. They give you the number that it currently is and where it's going to, and you can always make the adjustments on that. And then we have the pension. So Emily's pension is currently set where she's able to have an increase of about 1.5% each year. And I believe we were just being conservative. It's actually 3% is what it was set at, but we were just like, let's just be conservative to see what it looks like. Now, with that said, it's worth noting that if you are someone who started in Florida, at least after 2011, I think it was like July 7th or something. So we'll say 2000, we'll say August 2011 and beyond, they removed the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. And what the cost of living adjustment was is it basically said whatever your pension income was, it went up 3% every year to keep up with inflation. But you and I would say, of course, that makes total sense because inflation is a real thing. As we've seen the memes going around with the price of eggs, where someone was sharing, and they're like, "Oh, my husband, he's so phenomenal. He went all out for me," and it was like he got a carton of eggs and a rose. And I thought that was obviously I thought that was humorous. But we do know that the cost of things are going up, and because the cost of things are going up, your income, whatever it is, it needs to go up for it to match. And the way I could describe it to you is there was a point in time that someone's mortgage was $500 a month and their car payment was $100 a month. And we would say, whoa, that's really low. But then there was a point in time that a mortgage was $1,000 a month, which you and I would say wasn't that long ago. And then the car payment was like $250 a month. And then the mortgage went to $1,500 a month and the car payment went to $400 a month. And now mortgages over $2,000 is very common. And car payments over $600 is also very common. And so if we don't have income that's keeping up with these expenses, it becomes hard to maintain the exact same lifestyle. We're not changing our lifestyle in any way, but the cost has gone up a lot. And if you have one of those older pensions, then you may have a cost of living adjustment and you may not have had to contribute as much. So Florida, we adjusted the amount that had to be contributed. I believe teachers currently have to do 3%. I know also they have made the adjustment where instead of it being 5 years, it used to be 5 years to where if you work 5 years, then you're able to get into the pension system, and it's now 8 years. Same change around 2011, 2012. So now it's 8 years. They have to contribute 3%. They don't have the cost of living adjustment. And even if you're in a different state, what you'll recognize is no matter what the adjustments that they make, when they make them, it's never better than the previous iteration. That they always make it less enticing. So whatever time you get into that pension system, if you're at a pension job, it's only about 20% of jobs, then be happy with that version, because I promise you the people after you will have a less than amazing version. And so she has one that goes up with the cost of living, so that's nice. And then we have $36,000 that's going to be their floor. So when you have a pension, the way you have to look at it is, this is my floor. So I think I've done the bucket strategy, and maybe I can show you what that would look like real quick, where I can add that screen. Give me a second. All right. So we talk often about the idea of the overall bucket strategy, and I think I have my pen. I may have moved it when I went to go get the cat. What did I do with the pen? I may not be able to draw it for you. Oh, there it is. All right. So I will be able to draw it. So normally when we have the bucket strategy, there's normally 3 buckets. And so forgive my artwork. I just enjoy drawing. So yeah, bucket number 1, which is going to be your conservative bucket. You have bucket number 2, which is going to be your moderate bucket. And then you have bucket number 3, which is going to be your aggressive bucket. And so normally inside of our aggressive bucket, the way I would describe it is, this is normally going to be things that are probably 5+ years. If we want to be a little conservative, we probably say 7+. That if it's 7+ years before I touch this money, I can be aggressive. And so this allows me to still aggressively invest my money, keep up with inflation, outpace inflation, ensuring that I'm able to have a certain retirement income. And the way that I normally describe aggressive is anything that you can go down to zero. So it may not be common, but it's possible to go down to zero in the stock market. It's common for your real estate to go down to zero. Right. And so we could say, if it, right, I mean, if you really can, your business, right? You can have your business can go down to zero. So these are things that I'm not going to take the money out unless I have enough runway where I don't have to touch it for at least 5 to 7 years. There's a recession once every 10 years. Because there's a recession once every 10 years, I need the opportunity to allow my money to recover from that loss. I need to be able to give myself a little bit of time that if there is a recession and the stock market drops and it drops like 500 points, 1,000 points, something, we're like, dang, this is big. I need to be able to give myself a year or two to recover. Because if you look at most recessions, if you go back, look at 2008, the Great Recession, there was a pretty large amount of that money recovered over the next 5 years. And if you gave yourself 5 years, you would have been in great shape. The issue that a lot of us deal with is we don't actually give ourselves the 5 years to recover. And then in your moderate bucket, this is going to be things that are normally, we'll say like 2 to 5 years. And so if you're in the 2 to 5 years, this is where your pension would be. So I would put the pension here. If you had some sort of an annuity, you could put your annuity here. If that's basically a personal pension. If you have any type of bonds that you're invested in, any type of balanced investments where we're not really going for it, but it's like blue chip companies, right? You're investing in like AT&T, General Electric, Apple, Google, these companies that it'd be very hard to imagine them disappearing. It's not that it's impossible for them to go to zero. It's just really hard to imagine that. And so that's normally going to be your moderate bucket. These companies aren't going to grow a whole lot. We may be able to just match inflation, but we're not definitely not growing a lot more than inflation, right? We're about 3% in this bucket. And then in this bucket, we're probably shooting for the average, let's just say 10% just to make my life easy. And then this is going to be your safe investments. So this is your 1 to 2 years. We would consider this everything from like probably 1 to 3%. And so this is my cash and my cash equivalent. So that could be my money market account. It could be any CDs that you have. And so when you have these three buckets, the reason I like this for people with pensions is because you already have one stream of income. So we basically have the floor that no matter what's going on in our life, we're going to receive $3,000 every single month from the pension. That's our floor. And we're saying that our retirement is going to be somewhere around 4,000 a month. And then if the mortgage, if we still have it, and any, kind of one-offs that we may deal with, which means that we have to figure out how to bridge the rest of the gap. So you might say, I know it feels weird to even not say it there, but you might say, all right, well, then I'll use Social Security. And as awesome as Social Security can be, I think most of us know that it's not projected to do that well. So I generally try to plan understanding that Social Security is an option, but I'll normally put it around 70% of what the estimated amount is. And the reason that we say that is because right now we're spending from the surplus of Social Security, but as more and more baby boomers retire, where we went from a time where maybe there's 12 people working for every one person on Social Security, and now it's going to be 2 people working for every one person on Social Security. We haven't even talked about the debt and the tariffs and all the other stuff. As a result, most estimates say around 2041 that Social Security payments will be 70% of what's promised. So whatever's promised, 70% of that, because that's how much is generated in tax revenue. And so then from there, you won't be able to have the extra surplus unless they change something. But that would still be technically considered safe. And so then we would put the plan in place using that. And so right now, that we have stocks, we have real estate. They're not interested in a business. We have a pension. And then we have basically we'll have Social Security. And then from there, we'll build the plan out for all the streams of income that they would be looking for. And we'll be able to go from there with that. And so as far as your savings, so inside of each of the accounts, we currently put in $8,000 inside of the joint taxable account. 403B has $10,000 that goes in it every single year. In the IRA, we put $6,000 inside of it. HSA, $3,000. The overall 401k is 3% for Tom, and then he puts 5,000 inside of a Roth. And he currently doesn't actually do that, but we're recommending that. We're like, hey Tom, we should have some tax-free income in here. And he was like, sure, let's go ahead and do that. And so what you're seeing is this ends up being about 25% of their income. So most of the time, if you're investing in your retirement future and you're somewhere around 20%, you're probably in a good spot if you have 10 years plus, right? You have about 10, 20 years. If you put 20% of your income away, that's basically take Monday's paycheck, invest Monday's paycheck in your retirement. You can spend Tuesday through Friday. You'll probably be able to afford your retirement when it's said and done. All right, and so we go through all of those, and then that brings you to the plan. And so we'll go through some of these numbers, and I'll share with you, and we'll be able to see. So we have the 312,000 that we mentioned, and then what we'll focus on today is a couple of things because the situation is a little bit different, right? We have a family, we have some goals, and so we're going to make some small tweaks. So you see, we're able to maintain their overall retirement goal, like we're good. Their current age, investing 25% of their money towards their retirement, they're going to achieve their goal, and they would have achieved it either way. The main difference is we added more of that future proofing idea where it's like they have $1 million extra in their account for generational wealth. And I'll show you how we're able to save that for them. We'll show you the tax proposal, the education proposal, and then the rental property. So currently, when you have a pension, one of the big things that you have to think about is when do I take Social Security? Because there's a couple things you could do. One is you could start early, like one of you starts early, the other one starts later. You could use your pension where you say we both start later. So we start the pension at early, and then we let our pension our pension investments take us to 70. And then we use our Social Security, and now we have the maximum amount. And then we most likely will be okay as far as just having the income the rest of our life. So there's a couple of things that you can do. And it really depends on each individual situation as far as what makes the most sense for each individual person. And so from there, let me show you where the confidence. So you guys are familiar with this. The plan is out for, make sure. All right, so the plan has us out to 90 years old. And you can see that we're estimated to have anywhere from $0 to 1.2 million, right? So every investment is wrong. Every investment is perfectly right. And then the median ends up being about 3.1 million. So that's what we have there. And then when you look at the savings rate, I mentioned to you was about 25%. So you see we're about 27%. And because of the adjustments that we're able to make for them, we're actually able to be a lot more conservative in their investments. And I'll show you what that looks like. And so we're able to contribute, it's about 8,000 ends up being about 28% of their overall salary. We have a portion of that's going to education. And then they have the choice after the kids are done with college. Are we going to keep investing in their, that amount? Like we're used to not spending that, so we can invest that in our retirement, or what type of changes that we're going to make. For them, we're able to put a portion towards education. We couldn't pay the whole thing up front, but we were able to just put a plan in place where they were able to focus on their retirement, and they still were able to help the kids the way they wanted. The whole savings account we mentioned, the retirement funds as we talked about, and then the taxable investments that they have. And so when you look at that, all this screen shows is just simply says, where's the income coming from the different streams? And is there any point in time that we have a shortage? And you can see that we don't have a shortage, but we do spend more. This is the long-term care that we said was just our sanity check. Hey, were we able to make this work? And what I'll do is I will go through a few of these items. So we normally look at the stress test. And you can see that it's always based on where your money is at. And based on where their money was at that time, the stress test for them actually made inflation be the straw that could break the camel's back. That if inflation was just 1% higher than the estimated amount, because we have the pension income and it's tied to that 3% COLA, because we have that set amount, the amount of wiggle room, because they don't have as much, because they don't have that much invested aggressively, it then means that inflation plays a bigger role for this particular plan. Naturally, if you had a situation where you were investing relatively aggressively, then inflation won't play as big a role, because if inflation is up by 1%, you're not playing within the margins. You already are generating whatever that 10% that we had shown, or maybe 8%, whatever it was, you were well outside of any inflation concerns. Healthcare, not as big of a concern. Longevity, because we have a pension, longevity doesn't really matter. Like, hey, I'll be here forever. I'm gonna as long as the Florida's still paying out retirement income, I'm gonna be just fine, kind of a feel. And then you just have your overall investment. So what we'll do is let me show you a couple things to consider when you're just thinking about Medicare, because Medicare, I do get a lot of questions about Medicare. I mean, I thought it would make sense for us to at least adjust it a little bit. And so this is a very simple, just sanity check, the way I would describe it. And so we would say, hey, are you going to be someone that travels a lot, or are you going to be someone that is going to be relatively around your house? And the reason that that matters is because if you are someone who travels a lot, then you wouldn't be someone who would choose Medicare Advantage, because Medicare Advantage is a network plan. And a network plan means you sort of have to go to the doctors in the network. And so that's normally going to be your neighborhood. If you do a lot of traveling, could you have an emergency and go to a doctor outside of the network? Sure. But you'll be paying a premium to go outside of your network. And so if someone is traveling a lot, then we'll say, hey, maybe a Medicare plan is not for you. And then when you look at health considerations, for the most part, we're basically saying, do you want to visit the doctor a lot? Or do you think you're not someone that visits the doctor a lot? And the reason that matters is because your Medicare, when you're talking about things like your Part A and Part B and Part D, they don't have caps on the coinsurance and different things. So if you go a lot, you'll be paying that coinsurance, that deductible, you'll be paying a lot more out than if you don't go that much. If you are someone that's like, well, I think I would go kind of often, then you might want to look at a Medigap plan or the Medicare Advantage, because they have caps. And because they have caps, it just makes it easier to plan. You're like, hey, look, this is how much I pay. This is what my cap is. I'm not concerned about how often I go to the doctor. But it depends. Just how often do you plan on going? And then when you look at risk consideration, all we're basically asking is that, would you like a predictable amount of money to be paid? If you want a predictable amount of money, then having a Medicare Advantage or Medigap is going to give you a predictable amount, because they have caps and monthly premiums and things like that. If you're okay with it being less predictable, then that's fine. You still can choose all of them. But the Medicare Part A, B, and D, at least you wouldn't have the extra fees, because they're the ones that give you the predictable amount of health coverage and things like that. And then it's always important to notice when you talk about that your Medicare Part A covers your hospital insurance, your medical is Medicare Part B, and then Medicare Part D is the prescription drugs, and then the dental, vision, and hearing, that is only covered in the Medicare Advantage plans. Medicare Part C is the other way that you'll hear it referred to. And long-term care isn't covered by any of those plans, right? So it's not a part of any of those plans. And that if you are someone that's planning long-term care under Medicaid aid, right? So under Medicaid, it's a needs-based program. So there's a lot of steps inside of that. And I have another video, and you can go look it up, and I'll probably put a link to it. But you have to have only a certain amount of assets, and then certain places you put the assets where it doesn't count in the Medicaid formula, and other places you put the assets and they do count. And it's definitely something that you would need to plan. I would say at least a 5-year runway, if that's what your plan is. Otherwise, you would go ahead and just get long-term care insurance or self-fund it. And as we mentioned, it's normally going to be about $150,000 is what you just want to have extra as the safe spot to be able to cover that. Now, if you're someone who likes looking at this, look at that. I love this. It's called a waterfall. It's just a visual representation of where the money is going. And we're all different people. So if you're someone who likes the visual look of it and the colors, then you'll be like, this is great. So you make $140,000 a year. We have $87,000 that goes out to my expenses. And that's my living expenses, my housing expenses, my debt, and my insurance premiums. Then you have the amount that goes out in taxes, and then that breaks up into your federal taxes and your FICA taxes. The plan savings has all the accounts that we have. And then you can see that what we have is called unspent. So you have your net cash flow saved, which is $8,000. And then you have this little stream, which is your unspent cash flow. And so it's about $1,600. Everybody normally ends up having that unless you have a literal check sheet that has every single dollar where it goes. There's something that is just not a part of the plan and is extra. It's just good to have an idea what that number is. And you might say, yeah, we go out to a restaurant every so often, not a big deal. Don't worry about that. But if that number is kind of large, we can sit there and say, hey, this is what we're saying we're spending everything on. But based off of the numbers that we have, that means you should have an extra $8,000 lying around, an extra $30,000 lying around. And people will be like, well, Dre, I don't have an extra $30,000 lying around. And we're like, well, we got to find the money. So Whether or not that means we have more money to invest or we have a leaky faucet, whatever is causing the money to be caught up somewhere. But 1,600, I mean, that's probably, that's nothing crazy. We wouldn't spend a lot of time on that. That's a couple extra $100 a month that you may have just spent out randomly, went to a movie here, went to a dinner there, had some ice cream here. And if you're someone that doesn't like the visual representation, the breakdown is kind of nice and it's kind of simple. It has the same idea. Has my income, that's my salary. I don't have any other streams of income currently. My expenses, it lists them all down. The goals as far as today, there is no cost. That's what we're looking at. This timeline shows it, right? And then we have the taxes that we pay. And then we have the amount that we're saving. And then it gives us the same amount, the unspent and the net cash flows. So you're able to kind of take a look at that. And from there, if you're someone who likes to see the Excel spreadsheet, I don't show this to a lot of people because I do know it can feel slightly overwhelming. But basically what we're doing is we're saying, this is how old we are each year. This is how much money is going to be in my taxable investments, right? Because I'm not taking anything out. This is how much money that's going to be inside of my 401k and 403b, my pre-tax investments in my traditional IRA. And of course, I'm not taking anything out. So all these amounts should be increasing. And then what you'll do is you would go down the list and you say, oh, hey, what happened at 62? The number went to 0. And I'll show you because we have other charts, but you'll be able to track the money. So this is what we're estimating. This is how we're getting that 94% probability. We're saying this is how much money you should have in your account based off of the projections that we have. This is how much your account should grow. And then as we take the money out of the accounts, and this is how much you should have total. And then as you retire, you'll notice that some of the amounts change. So we have the taxable account, the money going in there, and then eventually you spend what's left of the taxable accounts, and then you don't have any taxable money anymore. And then you start going from the 401k, 403b, and traditional IRAs, and then eventually same idea. The money is running out of those accounts, and then we have only the tax-free account left. So you have the money inside the Roth IRA, which would be great. And you're going to be sitting there saying, well, Dre, I thought he was just putting $5,000 inside of that. So how are you getting a Roth tax-free retirement account where someone has $3 million left in there? I'm glad you asked that question. I will show it to you. And so when you go to the tax, and hopefully this is going well for you. If you have any just questions as we go through this, feel free to place them in the comments. I got that here for you. I did finish my book, Wealthy Retirement Wisdom, and I am putting something together where I'm going to send out autographed copies. So, but if you're like, I can't wait and you just want to get a copy, it's on Amazon currently, but I'm putting something together. You just have to give me a moment. I got you. And so when you look at our estimated taxes, we'll go to the tax strategy that we put in place for them. And you can see that this tax strategy generated $2 million more in tax adjusted ending assets. So they had $2 million more in their account by just optimizing their taxes. They paid almost $400,000 less in taxes. And then they were able to withdraw 2.7 less million because they didn't have to take that money out and their account was able to grow. So let me show you what we ended up doing for them. Remember, everybody's different. It depends where the money's at and what the goals are and how much we need. In this particular situation, the asset allocation is we focused on, in the same withdrawal strategy that we also focused on, is let's take the money out of the taxable accounts first, the tax-free accounts second, and then the tax-deferred accounts third. And because of where the money was located, we also did what we call Roth conversions. And we did the Roth conversions. It's a very fancy way of saying you take the money out of the tax-deferred accounts throughout a handful of years leading up to retirement, and you do the conversion at whatever time your taxes are below a certain number. For this particular plan, we said anytime they would have a $0 amount in capital gains, go ahead and do the Roth conversion, 0%, not $0. A 0% of capital gains tax, go ahead and do the conversion up to that amount. So if it was to push them into 10% capital gains, don't do the conversion. But if we look at the taxes for any given year and we're below that, we'll do the conversion. And then as a result of doing that, that's where all the savings ended up coming in. And so now we're able to save a significant amount more. And I think I can even show you the details. So from a number perspective, right? So this is what it would look like. We would say, all right, so we're doing the conversions. Anytime we have the ability to be at 0% on our capital gains, we did a conversion. And you can see that the conversion amount was $6,294 the first year. And where did that come from? It came from our tax deferred account. So these are the amounts we did the first years. And then you have the withdrawals from the taxable amounts. And so we're able to take the money out and we just keep moving it. And then you have your overall withdrawals from tax-free income. So we're making the plan work. And then you'll see as we start retiring, as we start getting our rental income, as we start adjusting our overall retirement plan, we're able to start taking out money from our tax deferred accounts, $37,000, and we're able to convert that, pay taxes on that at the first year of retirement. And it did not move us above the 0% capital gains tax. The next year we're able to do 84,000, then 73, then 65. And you can see that we were just doing the amounts that brought us to the 0% capital gains tax. So this is what a backdoor Roth is. It's the idea that I could leave all the money in my pre-tax account, which will be taxed at normal income in retirement. But the issue is I have required minimum distributions to deal with. If all of my money is in a pre-tax account and I have to take out required minimum distributions, I take out more money than I necessarily wanted to, and I have to pay taxes on that money when I take it out, my traditional income tax. By doing the conversions, whenever we had low taxes, now we're able to take the money out over a span of 5-10 years, which works a lot better than doing it over a span of 1 to 5 years. So now we have all this tax-free income. We're growing their tax-free income accounts, and we're paying the taxes each year, whatever brought us to that amount. And you can see that the amount steadily kind of stayed the same, and then it got lower and lower. And then at some point, we weren't doing the conversions anymore. Now we're just doing the withdrawal from our taxable accounts, as we mentioned, and then we're able to do really well with this. And then you have your withdrawals from your tax-free accounts. We're able to switch over to that, just as the plan shown. But this gives us the numbers, because sometimes we're just like, I think I want to see what the numbers look like, Dre. And so that's what the numbers look like for that. And when you do that with the plan, you find that you're sometimes able to make adjustments to how the allocation is. So their overall plan, they had about 58% in equities and about 42% is what would have been, 42% is what would have been invested normally in what would have been like bonds. And then we were able to be at closer to a 60-40. We just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. I actually enjoy it. It's called the Golden Butterfly Portfolio. And it's one of those that's designed in a way that works really well with a handful of economic environments. And that's kind of why I like that overall plan. Because what we're thinking is, if I have 20% of my money in large cap blend, which is just blending between growth and what's the other, how would I say it? Not value. So blend is normally between growth and value. So 20% large cap. Large cap is going to be everything probably about 5-10 billion larger is what the size of the company is. And then you have 20% in small cap value. And so that would be normally companies from 100 million to maybe like 5 billion, maybe like 1 billion. And so we have small cap value, so value stocks, where we're finding opportunities where the actual intrinsic value of the stock is the stock is lower than the value of the company, the actual intrinsic value of the company. And so we find those opportunities, and then we let the stock grow to its value, and then we would sell it at that time. 20% in long-term bonds, 20% in short-term bonds, and then 20% in gold. That is how you design the golden butterfly. And so we have a percentage of our portfolio that performs well in every environment, and it is a relatively stable investment. Because I have a percentage that's going to do well in every economic climate, I don't have to be worried as much about any of these environments, because I know something is going to go well. If the stocks are going very well, yeah, my gold's not going to do well. But if we're overspending and we're printing off a bunch of money and inflation is really high, then I know my gold's going to do well. But I know my long-term bonds won't. And so we accept the fact that we have the counterbalance of a bunch of different economic climates. And it does work very well for most people. All right. And then that is it. And so if you're a teacher, then that would be the plan that you put together. And as always, let me see here. If you enjoyed this, I think I have it for you. If you enjoyed this, you can go to obsidianwisdom.com/wealthy. And from there, you can put your information in, and we can set some time aside and we can discuss a unique retirement plan for you. As always, I'm thankful for our time. I'm Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.